How's it going, everybody? It's been 5 whole months, but Phil Talk Sports is officially back. Joining me on the first episode on the return. Couldn't think of anyone else I'd rather have on here but PR52. We're going to talk some Eagles football. The only other person I would have wanted on the return episode is, of course, Nick Rice, and he'll be on next week because we're back in full force. We are going to start off with Hank here because there's plenty of things to talk about. Haven't been on this screen since the Eagles lost the Super Bowl. That's not why I've been gone this long. As you can look behind me, we're still in the house repair. I'm finally at the point in my office where I can record again, but as you can look behind me, there's still plenty of work to do. So I tried to put up a couple cool things, some belts, give you guys something fun to look at. But that's where it is from now, and it'll be fun because now every episode you'll just see a little more improvement until the room is back to normal. So that's going to be a fun way to keep that going. But Hank is here, PR52. Thanks for doing this, man. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. We all know that you just tore your house down after the Eagles lost the Super Bowl. That's why you had to fix it up again. So
yeah, I'm sure that was part of it.
It's good to have shelter, but we want to see our team win, and we're all back in the swing of things. I haven't really been on that much since the draft. I take a bit of a break, much like you, but it is good to be back. Starting training camp. Preseason game, the Hall of Fame game started a few days ago, so it's just good to have football back.
It is, and like you said, we tend to take a break in the summer. It's kind of the duller days of sports, as people like to say, but I tend to do something. I might do a baseball episode or two since, working baseball, I'm around a lot of baseball people. Me and Nick will usually do something for, like, the NBA Finals at least, but all that was skipped away. Like I said, the last thing I did was talking about the Super Bowl. So real quick, we'll just get that out of the way. It's been 5 months. How has your processing been? Where do you stand on everything? And what do you think going into this season?
So obviously, when you lose the Super Bowl, both of us, we've already experienced something like this before, in kind of like a different, kind of more dramatic offseason. So, we all thought that once we lost the Super Bowl, we were going to lose everything. We were going to lose the starting corner, a starting safety, starting defensive lineman, starting offensive. We were probably going to lose like what seemed like an eighth of our team. Yeah. And we weren't going to be able to replace them. That's why we thought it was so important. And I think I remember seeing that short from you saying like this is our window, because if we lose, the window's gone. Right. And I'll say it like this. I feel a lot better about losing this Super Bowl than I did the last Super Bowl. Pretty much just because we have Super Bowl 30 or 40, Super Bowl 52 to hang on. I don't know why I said those other two numbers, but we had Super Bowl 52 to hang on. It's a championship that the Eagles won. It's a recent championship. Sure, you'd like to win too, but man, I'm going to say this right now. Those hats were ugly. They're just straight up ugly. I thought that I was going to have to. I felt a little bit better about losing it because we didn't have to wear them. Hope that the football gods aren't hating me for that.
It's funny you say that because I only recently I had the flat bill version of the one that we did win because that's just the style of hats I wear. Mm-hmm. But the one you're wearing, the actual locker room official one, I recently obtained. And I think we have to admit, these aren't great either. Like, who had the good idea of just slapping it up? Like, that should be around the eagle head.
I like this.
That's great, but the whole wording slapped on the side.
The wording on the side, I'll agree, is not that great. But honestly, I was like, I'm kind of glad. No, I'm just kidding. But I probably wouldn't have worn that one as much as I wear this one. I think this one is way better, despite not really being the best one. Yeah. But again, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good because we went through that season. It was kind of a roller coaster at the end, seeing as though the Eagles just went right through the NFC and the playoffs, and to not win and to kind of blow the lead the way that they did to a quarterback who was hurting way worse than our quarterback was. Mm-hmm. Okay. And just, that the whole quarterback show on Netflix, I'm not even going to watch the end of it. I'm not going to watch the last episode. I've seen parts of the Super Bowl game, which is more than I can say for Super Bowl 39 because I will never watch another second of that game. But it sucks that the offense played as well as they did, besides the turnover, and seeing as though like there's a lot of things that the team could have done, but there's also a few things that the team couldn't have done. And there's a lot of plays that the Chiefs made in that game that nobody can stop. They were holding on to those plays for the Super Bowl, and they were able to capitalize off of it and knock the Eagles off balance. The fact that a lot of Eagles players were very new to the Super Bowl and the Chiefs players were not very new to the Super Bowl, it was definitely a positive for them. But I think that going into this season, it's a little bit different because there's a lot less drama on this team. Luckily, I mean, of course, barring injuries can happen.
Sure.
That's something that could absolutely derail a season, especially if you went to the Super Bowl. But luckily, and knock on wood here, I don't know if this is made of wood, but at least our starting quarterback is super good friends with our starting wide receiver, and there's no issues there for now. Maybe something might happen, but
and me and you have a similar opinion going into the last year with Jalen Hurts. It's like neither of us said that he was going to be a bum and he doesn't deserve to be even a starting caliber quarterback, but me nor you predicted the season Jalen Hurts had. I think that's fair to say. We were pleasantly surprised by it. And now I'm at the point, and some people will take this as, oh, he's going to go back to being negative. We've seen this now. And now the real legacy of Jalen Hurts will begin. Can he do it again? Maybe not as much, but we need like 85 to 90% of it again. Because we've seen this very recently. We saw a quarterback have a near MVP performance and then fall off the wagon to the point that he's not even on a roster anymore. Recently, that man's name is Carson Wentz. And I'm not comparing the two, but I think it's very important to have, if the season Jalen Hurts just had is a 10 out of 10, he needs to come back with at least an 8.5, 9 out of 10 to be like, okay, that wasn't a fluke. That's who this guy is now. That I think is the most important thing for him moving forward. Not necessarily saying the Super Bowl trip again, but I agree with I thought our window was going to be closed. Last year, the window was wide open. I don't even know if the window was in the wall. I think it was just a hole in the wall. This year, the window is open, but it's about halfway because a lot of guys came back that I didn't expect. I don't think it's a surprise to say, had we won that game, Kelsey retires, Fletcher Cox retires. We probably let Slay walk off into the sunset, go get big money somewhere else. So the window, they were closing the window, and some of the veterans put that wood block in there so you can't close it all the way. That's basically my equivalent of that. I've talked about windows way too much already, but that's pretty much where I'm saying we're at. We've makeshifted another decent run at this, and I think that's all you can ask for because history will show, statistics will show that when you lose that Super Bowl, the chance of bouncing back is little to none, which shows when Kansas City lost to Tampa, how it didn't take long for them to get back in shape. Obviously, they have younger guys, and I said it in the last episode right after the loss. No hate for Andy Reid. Congrats to the Chiefs. Congrats to Chiefs Kingdom. No ill will towards that. It just sucked in the moment. I'm not going to look for my sister watches that quarterback show, and she asked me if I watched it, and I said no, I didn't really seem interested in it. I don't care about Kirk Cousins, and I like Patrick Mahomes as much as I can, considering he just beat my team in the Super Bowl. But it's just not my thing. But he does seem like a likable guy and all that. Doesn't seem fake, not like Russell Wilson style. His family is another thing, which we won't even touch on. But overall, it's what it is. After this year, there's no way a lot of those guys can come back. Then we're really looking into the new generation of this team.
I'll tell you what. I know we're not talking about the show, The Quarterback,
Mm-hmm.
but I would say out of the three quarterbacks in the show, Patrick Mahomes comes out as the worst.
Really? Okay.
Yes. Patrick Mahomes, there was a game between the Chiefs and the Raiders where it was Max Crosby, who's super yoked out. I don't even know why he's in the NFL. Guy. He should be like a wrestler or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a play where he kind of hit Patrick Mahomes late-ish. And Patrick Mahomes come at me, bro. Come at me, bro. I was like, dude, Max Crosby is going to bite your head off and eat it. Okay, he's gonna rip your head off. Don't mess with that dude. And Max Crosby's like, dude, what are you talking about? Patrick Mahomes, he just seemed like a fake tough guy. Okay. And you don't hear anything out of his brother. His brother doesn't say a word.
That's probably
They're
smart.
very smart.
I bet
Um,
they recorded plenty with his brother, but given this what happened, they
yeah,
axed all of it. That's just my theory on that.
and he comes off as being more annoying as than Brittany Mahomes.
Hmm,
He really does. In my personal, but I'm not much of a trash talker. But
sure.
yeah, I mean, we I think that if the Eagles do win that Super Bowl, Kelsey's gone.
Yeah.
Lane Johnson might be gone. Like you said, Slay might be gone. Uh, there were some pleasant surprises. Like I didn't think that Bradbury was going to stay. I actually wanted Bradbury to stay over Darius Slay. I personally think that Bradbury is a better corner than Slay. He kind of does a lot of things that rates him very high, but then he gives up a lot, and that's nothing against him. I just think that he's a little overrated. I think that Bradbury only allowed one touchdown all season, and
Yeah,
that was
I
to
thought
CeeDee Lamb.
going into the offseason, like, all right, we have three good corners, Pro Bowl caliber corners. We're going to be lucky to keep two of the three, and I assumed it'd be the younger two of the three. We ended up with the veteran and one of the younger ones, and I feel terrible for CJ. Going to the Lions and having the injury that he's got. It looks like he might be out for the whole year. I don't care
No,
where he went.
he'll be back. He'll be back.
Will he? Okay. Well,
It's
so
a
it just sucks for him.
it's a strain,
Oh, okay.
and like you always see Eagles fans on social media falling into that trap of like, he was talking bad about the Eagles, so we need to say something about it. It's like, dude, just leave it alone.
Yeah.
Like, just leave it alone. Like, he obviously didn't want to be here. He took a deal. He took a 1-year deal to be in Detroit. Let him make his bed. That's all you got.
Yeah.
That's all that really needs to happen in that situation. But I think that we will really see how good this draft was during the season. Like this whole like Philadelphia Bulldogs draft where we basically gutted we gutted the whole defense of the University of Georgia. We took like 5 out of 11 of their starters, like 5 out of or maybe 7 out of 11 of um their their first national championship starters are on our team right now.
And not to be
So
outdone, we then traded for a former Georgia running back as well, just to be safe, just to be sure.
just to be safe,
So
right?
that translates pretty well into what we were talking. We're talking about roster turnover. We have, we've lost a few guys. We brought in a few guys. I'll let you go first if you have any ideas. Out of the people that we lost, let's start with the loss. The people that were on the team last year that are no longer. Who do you think is going to be either the hardest to replace or just the biggest blow in general?
I'd say it's Gardner Johnson.
Mhm.
A lot of people might say Gravedigger
Mhm.
Hargraves, but I think that when he was gone, when they first let him go, it seemed like it was the worst thing. But then the fact that you add Jalen Carter in the draft, you have Milton Williams, you still have Fletcher Cox. That makes it feel a little bit better. But when it comes to the safety position, there's just a bunch of nobodies. There's just a bunch of question marks. I
Mhm.
know a lot of people say that Reed Blankenship, he's got like a high he's got like a Pro Football Focus ranking of like 78 or 79 or something like that, and a bunch of people are
You mean
happy about
Ed
that.
Reed Blankenship?
Yeah, Ed Reed Blankenship.
Yeah. He gives
Um,
off, and I mean this in the best way possible. He gives off Sean Considine energy, like just a
I
high
don't think so.
energy, was in the right place at the right time for a minute. Remember when people said like this is the next Brian Dawkins on like Madden '08 with him? Like it was what? But I cut you off. Go ahead, continue.
No, you didn't. No, you're fine. I don't think I think he's very different than Sean Constantine. Remember Sean Constantine? He kind of looked like a stick. Like I'm not even gonna
Yeah,
lie, he looked like a literal twig. I did
mm.
not. If people were saying that he was the next Brian Dawkins, I was not. I was not there for that
It
conversation.
was
That
more
is
so like Brian Dawkins is gonna mentor this guy and he's gonna be great. It was more like that. So whatever.
um,
So go
again.
ahead.
I think our safety position just has way too many question marks
Hmm.
on it. Obviously, there was a 5-year period where the Eagles were kind of a turnstile at the safety position. like, let's get this free agent who's cheap and just use him as a stopgap. And then we got Malcolm Jenkins, and then we were set at the safety position.
Right.
Here, we're gonna have to figure out who that guy is gonna be. Whether it's Reed Blankenship, whether it's someone we signed in free agency, whether it's that Sidney Brown guy, who again, like they all talk about, oh, this guy's having a really good camp. Oh, he's moving up in the world. I don't buy any of that hype. I'm sorry. I remember 2011 where people were like, oh, what was his name? Matthews. What was his name?
Casey
Matthews.
Yeah.
We were like, Casey Matthews, he's got bloodlines. He's amazing. He's going to be great. He's got a brother who's a Pro Bowler and is a Super Bowl champion, and his uncle was great. And I'm just like, okay.
Yeah. I agree with what you were saying about, like when Hargrave signed with the Niners, I was like, ooh, that's a big one. But when you thought about it for a minute, it's like, that's a great player, but that may be the easiest production to replace, given on how good the line already is, the Bulldogs that are coming in. I think the one that doesn't get talked about enough is the linebackers, because it might have been like an underrated situation, but like TJ Edwards came along really well throughout the season. Kaiser White also, like, obviously the headline of that is Hassan Reddick, but they were the perfect, like, Batman, Robin, and whoever else hung out with Batman and Robin. Like, it worked out fine for a linebacking core. Alfred. And again, there's people in line to possibly replace them, but I think TJ Edwards might be the one for me, because he fits so perfectly in that role. It's not like the star linebacker, but just the perfect, just under Pro Bowl level linebacker for that season.
Yeah, and I agree. He never got the recognition he probably deserved by the NFL. A lot of people might have kind of picked over him, probably because of the whole undrafted free agent kind of thing, and the fact that he wasn't as productive until 2021 when he kind of stepped into his own. And I can definitely see where you're coming from on that. The linebacker position is a position that the Philadelphia Eagles have definitely not put any sort of anything into. I can't remember the last time that, maybe it was like D'Amico. He was maybe the last, or maybe Hicks, the last even decent linebacker that the Eagles had. Like, I think you need to go all the way back to like Jeremiah Trotter in 2004 to be like, okay, we actually had a Pro Bowl caliber middle linebacker. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of, stopgap guys.
Yeah, like your Stuart Bradley types that were like solid. You couldn't necessarily complain about him, but you knew he was already as good as he was going to get.
Yeah.
So what do you think as far as additions? What do you think is the either draft or free agent? What new player do you think are you most excited about?
Well, I mean, on paper, the Eagles had a good draft, and you look at the situation and you see, Jalen Carter. On the surface, he's a great player, but then you're like, well, he also did this really bad thing, aka flee the scene of a awful car wreck that ended up killing a teammate and a member of the university, or like a representative from the team. Yeah. And you've got character issues there. But again, I don't buy into the hype, but from what I've been hearing, it's just like that dude's just been going nuts. Like, the Eagles had one of the best offensive lines in the National Football League, and he's just clearing dudes out. Like, he's just taking numbers, and he's playing hard on the field. So I would say I've heard really good things from him, but the Eagles, I would like to see something from the running backs, right? I've heard, for the last few years, the Eagles just had Miles Sanders, who was a good running, like, running back to running back, just like run the ball. Of
Mm.
course, we saw how much he failed in the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
But
that was rough to
DeAndre
see, man.
Swift, if he can stay healthy, man, like he can be like a receiver, he can be a running back. Like he can be like a weapon for the team.
So
I
are you
think I'm
going?
most excited to see him.
Okay, I was gonna say, are you more Swift over Penny at that point? Because for a
I'm
minute,
more
everyone was Penny was the shiny new toy, no pun intended. But then Swift came rather quickly right after in the draft. Nobody expected that one. So you're going Swift over Penny, you think?
I'm personally going Swift over Penny. I never liked I always thought that the Seattle Seahawks were dumb for drafting Penny that high.
Mm,
I guess because of Donnell Pumphrey, come from the same university
yeah,
and did similar things
and broke a lot of the records.
and
He had
broke a
the
lot of records,
yeah,
but he
he
was
had
a smaller
some
back.
rushing records in the nation in general. So yeah, he had a lot of fanfare coming out. I
But
know that.
he was a smaller back. Penny's a lot bigger, but man, I just want to see a guy. I want to see a back that can catch the ball out of the backfield.
Mm,
And we have not been seeing that very often on the Eagles because that's just something that I think the coaching staff looked at Miles Sanders and was like, he's not going to be able to do that.
yeah.
And we saw that. I think that was one of the things on his scouting report where people were like, he's really bad catching the ball out of the backfield or catching the ball, period.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was just a correct analysis of his abilities.
And it was just rough with Sanders because that's a guy I liked. He played at Penn State. He was right behind Barkley. That's why he wears 26 now because him and Barkley are still tight or whatever. But after that Super Bowl, man, like the fact that there was even discussions about bringing him back, I'm like, you can't. Like that's the most ineffective a starting running back I think has ever been in a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I don't have the stats to back that up, but that's how I feel in my
And
soul.
it's kind of amazing that the Eagles only lost by 3 and scored 35 points
Right, exactly.
without a successful running back. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
Gainwell was better. Gainwell did better.
yes,
It
definitely.
almost seemed like Miles Sanders, like he wasn't running hard enough in that game because he would just get stopped for losses. It's almost like he was like a little kid running into a bunch of sumo wrestlers and they just
Mhm.
he bounced right off of them.
Yeah, I hate to say it, like the lights almost seem too bright for him in the moment, which is asinine to think. Because again, playing at Penn State, you play in front of 100,000 people, no exaggeration. That's how many people are in Happy Valley. You've played in the major bowl games, you've played in this, that, and the other. I don't get why that happened, but he just seemed deer in the headlights from the first carry. That was a fumble that went out of bounds. So,
Maybe in a few years we're gonna see something from him like a tell-all kind of thing. This is what
yeah,
happened.
mhm,
Because he was not playing like himself.
absolutely.
Like Miles Sanders had over 1,000 yards last season rushing.
Mhm, yeah.
So
So you covered the running backs pretty well for additions. I was gonna juggle kind of both of them, figure out who I think is better. Um, I don't really care who starts. That's not really going to be important to me because they're both going to get significant touches. So the other one I'm going to throw in there because this was a very like low risk, high reward signing is if Greedy Williams becomes anything that he was supposed to become, that's going to look like a genius pick or pick up. And if he doesn't, it's just like, all right, well, that was worth a shot because we have other corners on the roster. So that's someone I'm interested to see for sure.
I want to see him do well, but I've heard that again, this is what I've heard.
Mm.
I've heard that he's not been doing very well at all.
It's disappointing.
But again, let's see what happens during preseason because
Yeah.
preseason, like a guy can have a horrific camp and just do really well during preseason. That's probably not going to happen if usually if they do really well in camp and they do bad in preseason, it's usually not the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see a lot from him because the Eagles don't like to play their starters for very long. Like there are teams who they'll be playing their starters during the second preseason game.
Mm-hmm.
The Eagles, from what I've seen, they like to play their starters for one drive. I think in the last 2 preseason games, Jalen Hurts has only played one drive in each game, and that's been it. Now, of course, he was going to play in that Patriots game, and I think he got bubble guts like 2 years ago, and they just pulled him out. And
Right.
then Joe Flacco was the quarterback, and the team looked horrible.
Yeah,
And that's putting it lightly. They looked horrible. But
no, that's a good point. I think if nothing else, he'll get a lot of opportunities in the preseason to sink or swim. So that's worth it or whatever. So that was the normal part of the offseason. We have this every year. You have signings, you have people that leave, and you draft people. But what doesn't happen every offseason is the return of an iconic uniform that we haven't seen in 20 years. And you of all people have been, if anyone's more hyped for this that I know than me, it's definitely you. It's the return of the Kelly Green jerseys. We're going to see him twice this year. I've followed the whole thing. I was not someone that was attempting to buy one on the cuff because the only Eagles game I'm making it to this year is in Tampa, so they're obviously not going to wear them on the road. If I was worried about having one to go to a Kelly Green game, that'd be different. So I still don't know which jersey I'm wearing to that, but I didn't have to go for it right away. You were actually able to snag one at the release. We were talking through that whole process. First of all, what does this mean to see this return? Because it's been right around 19, 20 years at this point, right? When was the last year? 93, 4?
It's the last year was 95.
Okay.
So it's been 28 years, I think it has been.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I guess there isn't like a real reason. Like we saw that Iraq post where he was like, oh, it was because Jeffrey Lurie wanted to pave his own way. But we always heard that it was Christina Lurie that didn't like it.
It could have been both, though. It could have been the reason to like, I don't really like these. It's like, well, we own the damn team. Let's look into other options.
We own the damn team, so we're going to change it.
Mm-hmm.
I will say this. If you were going to modernize a team, then it was smart to change the logo. Because the Kelly Green jerseys, they're not modern. Mm-hmm. Okay? No matter what anybody says, the Jets even changed. The Jets are the team that had like their original like New York Jets jerseys with the green and the white, and then they changed it to Kelly Green. Mm-hmm. And then they changed it back. And then they changed it back
to Kelly for the second time. Yeah.
I don't think anybody was like, nobody was like, do you want to change them back to Kelly Green? Because, dude, you won the greatest game you've won in your franchise's history, Super Bowl III. Everybody remembers you wearing those like dark forest green and whites, mm-hmm. right? So really, I don't know why you changed. I don't know why there was a change.
Yeah, they should have done what we're doing, like retro games where the Kelly. I do like the whole Jet logo on the helmet. They should have done what we're doing right now. There was no reason to go back to it.
But I have a theory that I've always said that that Kelly Green is going to be back, because if you look at all of the all like the graphics that the Philadelphia Eagles come out with, mm-hmm. they've had there's been Kelly Green mixed with the midnight green.
Ever since they started the Autism Awareness Foundation mm-hmm. that they link with, the official color for that has almost become the Kelly Green. Yeah. So they mix it back into everything.
So I was always thinking like they might get rid of a color and put Kelly Green in, like kind of like what Tampa does.
Yeah,
like orange creamsicle does not go with that red color, but it's always been like a third color in there. The numbers are outlined in creamsicle.
Yeah.
So I've always
pewter, the brown color too.
Yeah, or pewter. But I've always said they might get rid of like a black or a silver and they'll put in Kelly Green. That's what I've always been thinking in my mind. I don't know if there's ever a way you can get rid of this logo.
Yeah.
Because at this point it's so iconic.
Right.
But with the Kelly Green uniforms and going, obviously these are the uniforms the Eagles wore from like 1987 all the way to 1995 before they changed the logo. They've gone through like many different designs from 1996 to now. Like we haven't worn the same uniform. We haven't had the same mm-hmm. like nameplate on the chest.
Yeah.
But
And
think
the shade of green has changed a lot. Like if you over Nike had a lot to do with that. We've talked about that before privately, but it's evolved. It was never we're gonna change this. And as you mentioned, I don't think we should ever get rid of the logo on your hat. I love this. A lot of people romanticize the Kelly greens, but it's important to remember that whole era was like not a lot of winning happened in it.
It's horrid.
So, as we romanticize it now, I get Jeffrey Lurie wanting to change it when he bought the team to change the era and everything. I love the uniforms we have now. I still think we have the best helmet in the league. No one else quite does what we do. Every other bird logo team, like we just had your hat logo on the side of the helmet, it would look dumb. It would look like the Cardinals. So the fact that we do the bird wings, I think, is better.
Angry birds.
Yeah, it would be an angry bird looking logo. So I'm glad we do exactly what we do. I don't want it to go away, but I love the idea of Kelly Greens for a year, a game or two every year moving forward. I love a throwback Thursday night football game or something. Like I'm glad they're back in the rotation, but the people that are a little more, brought up in it, like, oh, I want to go back to this permanently. I never want that to happen, but I'm glad they're back in the fold. How was it trying to get one at launch though?
So that was kind of nuts. I was checking my phone about 5 minutes ago because it's supposed to be delivered today by 7 p.m. Central Time, and I didn't expect that because I was like, it was one of those things where my wife had a doctor's appointment in the morning, so her appointment she had to leave at around 7:45, and I was like, I'm gonna get a jersey. I want the limited one because I feel like paying $50 extra is necessary for it to look more like the on-field jersey. I know that the nameplate is now screen printed in the back. It's not sewn on like it used to be.
Right.
And the numbers, they're not sewn on. They're not like tackle twill sewn on, but it's a different like screen printed material apparently. So I'm excited to see it. And it'll be different than it'll be different than the style that they used to have for like from 2017 to 2022. Because I think it's the new type is called like the Vapor Fuse, which Oregon used to. Or if you want to know what kind of jersey, if you want to know what kind of jersey the NFL is going to wear in like 3 or 4 years, just look at whatever Oregon is wearing, and that's exactly what everyone else is going to start wearing afterwards. But I always wake up at 6:30 because my son wakes up at 6:30, like on the dot. He's always just going to wake up at that point in time. She went to the appointment at 7:45, and I was like, all right, 15 minutes. Hopefully they drop this jersey. I was like, man, I want me a Fletcher Cox Vapor Fuse. I was hoping that they were going to bring that out. If they didn't, I was like, all right, if it's a Brandon Graham, I know I booed you on draft day back in 2010, but over 10 years is long enough. I never dissed Brandon Graham after that. It was just I wanted Earl Thomas. I think most Eagles fans wanted Earl Thomas. We wanted a safety. A safety was the worst position on the team. Defensive line, we had great defensive linemen. But defensive backs, we did not have good safeties. So when they dropped, I was like, dang. There's no defensive player that I want because I think the only defensive player that they dropped in the Vapor Fuse was Darius Slay, and I'm not getting a Darius Slay jersey. Nothing against Darius Slay, he's just not my favorite player. Sure. And then Kelsey, I've had a lot of bad things to say about Kelsey, like 5 or 6 years ago before we won the Super Bowl. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to get a Hurts because again, boot him on draft day, not because of him, but because of the Eagles. And I was thinking maybe a Brown, AJ Brown, maybe a Devontae Smith, but I was like, nah, I'll get myself a Dallas Goedert. I felt like that was the best option. But when I got to the website right at like 9 p.m. or 9 a.m. Eastern, which is 8 a.m. Central, once they dropped, it was like the page doesn't work.
Yeah, 404 page not it crashed.
I was like, dude,
I was at work, not even trying to buy one, but I wanted to see how this was going to go. And yeah, the second I refreshed the page, the shop page went from normal colors to Kelly greens are in. Click the ad, boom, nothing.
Yeah, and I knew that was going to happen because it's like whenever something is done, like Eagles fans are kind of like Bills fans in that way. Like we're not the biggest fan bases in the National Football League, but when we do something, we go to the extreme to do it.
Right. Real quick about the Bills, because we were talking about teams changing their uniforms. The Bills may be the only one that going back to a former look was the right choice. Because like the JP Lossman era Bills jerseys were one of the ugliest ever. So I think they made the right call on that, just since you brought up the Bills.
I think it's them. And did you see the Minnesota Vikings throwbacks that they brought back?
Yeah, they look good.
They need to be their jersey.
Yeah.
Like whatever the Vikings are doing right now, that's not working for them.
Mm-hmm.
When they were like, "Oh, we're bringing back our throwback jerseys," I was like, "Bro, you wore those jerseys in 2005. That's throwback."
Mm-hmm.
Like I was like 16 years old then. We're gonna call that throwback.
Yeah.
I think them and the Rams.
Rams is a good call.
Well, excuse me. The Rams jerseys don't look as good, but like the jerseys that it looked like they were going to go with when they went to the Super Bowl against the Patriots. But yeah, I agree, and I think that in this situation, I was just like I thought I considered myself lucky because that day Fanatics was like, "Oh, by the way, we need to refund a bunch of people because they bought a jersey that we didn't have enough. We didn't have enough jerseys. We didn't have enough. We didn't have enough product to give to people." And I was like, "Dang."
The only other time I heard something like that happening, like it's getting a little easier now, but when like PS5s were impossible to get, there was a handful of people that even if they got the order in, they got an email like a day later that their thing got canceled. That's like the only other time I've ever heard that happening.
And there were people who they weren't expected to get theirs until like September or October. And I got mine like 15 minutes after it dropped because I was still managing my son because he was just bouncing off the walls and stuff like that. And I was still trying to figure out which one I wanted.
Right.
But I think that the people who got it, they were definitely considered, they were like lucky that they were able to get it automatically. And at those pro shops, Eagles fans were going to try to scalp those like buy like 20 jerseys and just scalp them to people.
Which if you do, by the way, if you are those people, you're a scumbag. I don't care if it's Eagles fans. I've seen it at UCF yard sales. I've seen it at anything ever. If you do that, you're a scumbag. Because a lot of these people too, they'll buy them and they're only putting them for like $50 to $100 more than the retail. So it's like, is it worth being a scumbag to make $100 on a jersey? Like, I don't think it is.
But I think some of these people were like, just give me the money beforehand because I think they kind of knew what the prices were. And, you know, the hope for those people is, you know, you do it honorably and you're not charging people. I think they were
That's a little different to me.
I think they were like, asking
you're
for the
in
money.
Line and I'm like, hey, here's your money because we're friends. Like, that's different. But to do it with strangers, and that gets a little shady.
But that didn't end up working anyway because you were only allowed to buy 3 jerseys. Yep. So they only limited you,
which was smart. That was a great idea by them.
Yeah,
definitely. So you got the Goddard one. It's supposed to come today. If we would have been really lucky, we could have done an unveiling right here on the podcast.
Right.
But I'm sure you will do something like that for your channel. But in the meantime, I do have, while I didn't buy one recently, I do have from about 10 years ago, I do have Kelly Green because I have the Randall Cunningham Mitchell and Ness jersey. It's a medium. It doesn't quite fit like it used to because I got it like 12 years ago. But I do still have it, so I do have some Kelly Green in there. Actually,
understand those jerseys always run big.
So you used to be like if I had a large in that now, it'd be I can wear it. It's just tight. Like I would prefer a large.
I understand that, but like I have like right now I wear a large.
Yeah,
like this shirt is a large, but like. If I was to put on a large, like jersey, like a large limited jersey, it's gonna be like the sleeves are probably gonna come down to here. Like I have an extra. Okay, so the first jersey I ever owned was a McNabb jersey. My grandparents bought it for me in 2002. They bought me an extra large jersey. Extra large. The sleeve came down to here. The sleeve came down to
Oh yeah.
here.
Well, you got to think that was Reebok back then too. Things are Nike jerseys look like comparing Reebok to Nike. A Reebok jersey looks like somebody let the air out of a Nike jersey. Like they're meant to be looser. I prefer them personally, especially like if you're going to go to a game that's like hot. Like when I went a couple years ago to Tampa, I wore a Nike custom one that I got with my name and number on it. And my cousin was smart enough to wear an older Reebok one with the holes in it. And I'm sweating like a whore in church, and he's fine over there because that's just the way they're made. I much prefer Reebok to Nike even now.
I agree. I don't like how in the authentic jerseys, the like sleeve is like rolled. Like I have a
Oh
Nick
yeah,
Foles
yeah.
authentic one. The sleeves are like rolled all the way up to here. I'm like,
Mhm.
bro, I'm not wearing that.
I have UCF jersey like that were worn in games, and they have that because they're meant to be. I don't know if it's pad cut or there's a term for it, but yeah, if you get one that wasn't game worn like that, then yeah, there's no real point in that. I don't mind yoke sleeves though, the ones that just stay a little tight around your, but they're still a decent. Like I have one or two like that. I got a Dante Culpepper jersey, not game worn or anything, but I think I have a. What do I have? I have a Brian Dawkins, not Mitch Ness black one that's got the yoke sleeves. That's pretty sweet. But yeah, so I'm definitely interested to get it. I'm glad they did it. It was definitely the highlight of the offseason. Before we jump off this topic, they announced the games that we are going to wear them. There was rumors it was going to be 3 games. It ended up being 2, which made a lot more sense. So it's the Dolphins and the Bills. I think the Bills game is going to look very aesthetically pleasing because it's going to look like a game from like 1992 because they wear the retros normally anyway. But the Dolphins one confused me. I was very surprised it wasn't at least one NFC East team, like Giants or Commanders would be whatever, but they won't have the look they used to. I was surprised we did not get a Giants or Cowboys game in there thrown in. The Bills one, I think, is a cool one though.
Yeah, the Bills one is cool. I think it really harkens back to the fact that when we began wearing the black jerseys, the Eagles would exclusively wear them against AFC opponents. But I think one of the reasons why they stopped was because the Eagles weren't beating those AFC opponents. And then there was like a long stretch in which they wore black and they almost always won unless they played Dallas.
Yep,
Like
I remember
almost
that.
every time they wore them from like 2013 to now, they've worn them and almost every single time they win unless they play Dallas.
Yeah.
So that is my thought process there. I also, maybe there's a possibility that, the Bills wear their throwback helmets,
Yeah,
with like the old style Buffalo that doesn't have like the laser coming out of its eye.
they do have the retro red helmet now too. They could always throw on those for a game or
Yeah.
whatever.
And
But yeah,
Miami
I'm excited to
Miami
see it. In
does
general,
too.
the more retro, like you mentioned, the Vikings, the who else is Seahawks are rocking retros this year. It's free money. Like people are gonna enjoy that era, and obviously the Kelly Green aesthetically is beautiful. I actually hate the what I'll call the Ron Jaworski era jerseys. Like they look
With
too
the
much like
Liberty
the Jets
Bell on the sleeve.
with the Liberty, which that I don't hate. Like if they had that now, like whatever. But yeah, they look too much like the Jets. Like it's just the rings around the sleeves. Nothing about it. They had to put the Liberty Bell on it for you to know the difference. I feel. So like there was a small like murmur that they were gonna attempt that version, which I'm glad that never happened. But yeah, the retro thing, it's easy money. I'm glad they're finally leaning into it. More teams will get it, and then you got teams that don't get it, like the Colts, because their new uniform, their alternate uniform looks horrendous.
Yeah, that one looks. I think you said something like it looks like the team in the movie that the main team is playing against, or something like that, or
Yeah,
the
it'll be
bad
like the
boy
last
team.
scene in the movie when they face the bad guy team.
Yeah.
It'll look like that for sure. And then
What
as far as
one?
normal jerseys
Yeah.
go, the Cardinals have the worst uniforms in the league now. There's nothing cool about them. Just says Arizona in Times New Roman font on the chest, and it's awful. I realized they used to wear that in like the Emmitt Smith era,
Yeah.
But it didn't look good then, and it doesn't look good now.
But it was a different. But honestly, the jersey looked different. It was more plain.
Yeah.
Um, with like the Arizona flag on the sleeve.
Hmm. Yeah.
Before we finish this topic, it was actually kind of funny because I had to educate Kelly, my wife, on the fact that because she only thought that the Eagles wore one Kelly Green jersey from like the beginning of their time all the way till 1995. And I had to be like, no, they were like 4 or 5 different iterations of it. And there was like a website that was like rank all the jerseys, all the throwback jerseys that are coming back this year. And they were like, Eagles are at 4. And the reason why the Eagles are at 4 is because now they have like a black lining or new from the jerseys they wore. They had like a black lining around the numbers, and I had to be like, no, they've in the jerseys that they wore from 1986 all the way to 1995. They had those black lining. Like if you show the jersey again, it has black lining around the numbers. That is not a new thing. That is the jersey that they wore in that era. And she was like, well, in this picture, I know I'm pointing at you right now, but in this picture from the throwbacks they wore back in 2010, they didn't have that. And I was like, well, that's because in 2010 they were commemorating the 60th anniversary.
Yeah.
Or was it it was the 50th anniversary.
Yeah, it was the 1960 team.
Yeah, from the 1960 and our last NFL championship game back then. It was our last. Yeah. And she was like, "Oh, I didn't know that." So I was like, "Yeah, this is." They didn't have the jerseys that Randall Cunningham and Reggie White and Clyde Simmons and Eric Allen and Keith Jackson and Jim McMahon, right?
Yeah.
Jim McMahon was on the team, right? Fred Barnett, right? They did not wear jerseys with silver numbers.
Right.
The only silver was on the helmet.
And the pants. They wore silver pants at times.
Yeah, well, yeah, they wore silver pants, but not on the actual jersey. But I had to be like, this is the picture of Randall Cunningham wearing a Kelly Green jersey. Do you see black borders around the numbers? Yes,
I have one of those too. I have a kids extra large that I didn't even think it fit me when I bought it. It was cool and I bought it, and I think I wanted to hang it up somewhere. It's in my garage now somewhere. Closing uniform comments for me too, that the Bucks finally bringing back the creamsicle. I think that's smart. Also, I think a lot of people are upset that they didn't do it a year early so Brady could have worn one. I think a lot of people wish that would have happened. And then with the Titans wearing Houston Oilers stuff is gross. I understand why they're allowed to, but it's gross in my opinion. It should not be a thing.
Someone I know said something like, why are the Titans wearing Oilers jerseys? There aren't any oil refineries in Tennessee. And I was like, actually, there are. There are quite a few oil refineries. And I had to explain, at this point, right? What was it? The Tennessee Titans own the rights to the Houston Oilers. The New York Jets own the rights to the New York Titans.
Yeah.
And the Kansas City Chiefs own the rights to the Dallas Texans.
Yep.
So it's like all these teams have something from another team that they had to relinquish. I thought it was real awkward, by the way, when DeAndre Hopkins, when he played for the Texans, was wearing an Oilers jersey. I was like, that was kind of awkward because
definitely.
That's not what your team was.
So before we started recording this, and I think it's still going on right now, the Hall of Fame ceremony for 2023 is currently taking place. We have 9 new entries into it. Anyone stand out to you? Who's your favorite player in this class, most deserving, anything like that? What's your highlights for this year? Or I can go first.
Well, I would pretty much just have to go with the guys that I actually watched while they were playing. And that's pretty much Joe Thomas, Zach Thomas, and Darrelle Revis?
And Rondé Barber.
Yeah, I'll go with Rondé Barber. I'm still getting over How he closed our stadium, Veteran Stadium out, but
Mm-hmm.
Veteran Stadium was kind of like a crap hole.
Well, so like I live in Florida, obviously. I've never hated the Bucks. I understand Rondé Barber's greatness more than maybe other people will. I do hate that every time he comes up, they have to show that play. Of course, I've told this story before. Growing up, like I would watch the Eagles and the Bucks. Didn't really know which team I liked more. So that game happened. The Bucks win, and I wasn't happy. And that was the moment I realized I must like the Eagles more than the Bucks. So if anything, he really helped me out, moving forward. So I give him that for sure. Joe Thomas, of course, another one
Yeah.
that's just
I mean,
deserving of it.
Joe Thomas he only had like one winning season. It was like the
And never
season
made the playoffs. His rookie year, they went 10-6, and then
when
never again.
no, didn't he wasn't he playing for them no, he couldn't have been playing for them in 20. No, so he never had a winning season. Or he had
Right,
one
right.
winning season, his first season,
I
but
was watching
never
it
went to
earlier.
the
He was,
playoffs.
yeah. They went 10-6 and missed the playoffs in his rookie
I
year. Is
remember
what they were
I
showing.
watched the Hall of Fame game, and he was standing there with his son, and they were like talking, and his son was just giving like, "Dad, stop talking. I want to watch the game. Like I don't want you to." He's like standing there with his arms on his son, and his son was just kind of like,
I
"I'm
don't want to be
bored.
in front of this camera
I don't
anymore.
want to be in front of this camera right
Yeah.
now."
It's always funny especially with someone like Joe Thomas, like when you see offensive linemen like years later and they look like normal humans again. They
Mhm.
lose like 100 pounds because they're not eating 10,000 calories a day. I think Jeff Saturday is the holy grail of this
It,
phenomenon, but Joe Thomas very much as
it's
well.
something like if you're a big player, you lose a lot of weight, but if you're a small player, you gain a lot of weight.
Definitely,
And
that's perfectly said.
that's the whole thing right there. I would say that the one that irks me the most, man, I always said that Darrell Rivas was a really good player, but he rubbed me the wrong way this offseason when he had many choice words for Asante Samuel in saying that there's no way Asante Samuel will ever be in the Hall of Fame.
He should absolutely be in the Hall of Fame. I will go to my grave
Like
saying that.
there were seasons where Asante Samuel had more than 8 interceptions in a season.
Yeah, multiple
You know how
times.
difficult it is to have more than 8 interceptions in a season and have done that like 4 or 5 times? That's
and
ridiculous.
and he has all the interception records for the playoffs, like
Yeah,
most pick sixes, most this, that, and the other. It was wild to me to learn in that discourse that like Patriots fans blame him for the Giants Super Bowl because scoring 14 points isn't a good enough reason to
I
not win
know,
a game.
right?
But yeah, that's just how that
Well,
goes.
yeah,
But no,
they blame him because the ball went through his. Let me tell you something. If Asante Samuel catches that ball, he lands out of bounds, dude. There's no way he's catching that ball. His
yeah.
feet don't land in bounds. That's what people don't get. There was no way he was intercepting that ball cleanly.
And something that won't go on his Hall of Fame resume is he is, as far as I know, the first player to ever truly, we'll hear it a decade from now from Brady, but the first guy to truly call Bill Belichick on his bullshit. Because
Yeah.
he was like, best corner in the game, 8 interceptions, and they didn't want to pay him. And he said, screw it, I'll go to Philly
And
and
then
be
he
a,
came to Philly and he had like one of the best 4-year stretches
yeah.
in NFL history. He was a Pro Bowler 3 out of those 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
One year he had like 9 or 9 interceptions, multiple pick 6 games,
Yep.
including in the playoffs.
I do
Um,
actually own. I might. It's right over there. I'll try and grab it. I'll let you talk. I'll go grab it. But
yeah.
I have a game worn Asante Samuel jersey that he has a. When we played Monday Night Football against the Browns, I forget the year.
Oh yeah,
He picked.
2008.
Okay, so he picked sixth Brandon Whedon in
Yeah.
this jersey. So I'm gonna let you
No,
talk. I'm
no,
gonna
it
grab it right
wasn't.
over here.
It wasn't Brandon Whedon. It was someone else because Brandon Whedon wasn't in the NFL yet. It was Derek Anderson.
Okay, maybe that was it. But here's the jersey.
It was Derek Anderson.
Game worn of and you can always know if they're game worn because of where is
The
it?
NFL, isn't there an equipment
Yeah,
thing in the
in
back?
in the collar is going to have how they like their cut, and it could change year to year. Maybe guys like it, more and more or less or whatever. But if you see it in here, so every jersey gets made at the beginning of the year, they make 2 of each color in case something happens. So you'll have a game worn and a game issued. This is one or the other, but it at one point was in his locker. So, if it's the one he actually wore, he got a pick 6 in it. If not, it was his at one point. Still pretty cool.
I too have an Asante Samuel, but it's a replica jersey. So it's
I got one of those recently too because I like him extra because he also went to UCF. So that's my guy.
That's true. That's true.
Which,
Florida cornerbacks love to play for the Philadelphia Eagles in the mid 2000s.
Definitely.
But yeah, I mean, I thought that those comments were completely off base. I think that people don't give Asante Samuel enough credit for what he did. He was not the same kind of cornerback as Darrelle Revis was. Revis was a shutdown, be on your back type of cornerback who people didn't really throw to him a lot.
Right.
Which I get. He was really good.
Yeah. If you want to say Darrelle Revis is the best corner of his era, fine. I'm not going to argue.
No.
Asante's two. I don't know who.
Asante Samuel, on the other hand, would sit back in his zone and take chances.
Yeah. And they pay off a lot.
Like you said, in a game, there was a high percentage of a chance that he was going to get an interception.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was probably I would say there was a
for that 4-year stretch
chance.
If fantasy football back then, I know this is kind of a thing now, if you could draft a single defensive player, he would have been like a top 3 defensive pick all those years.
Yeah.
You might pick like a JJ Watt or something over him just for fantasy perspective. But yeah, I will always defend, I have my reasons. He played for the Eagles. He went to UCF. I get all that. He kind of wanted his son to go to UCF. He wanted to go to Florida State. He didn't stop him from doing that because in that time frame, he's like, if I had the offer of Florida State back then, I probably would have gone. So I'm not going to stop you from going. And that makes total sense.
Yeah.
But I will always defend that guy.
And he was really the last great Eagles cornerback.
Yeah, absolutely.
From 2011 or 2012 all the way till Darius Slay's second season, we had nobodies. Jalen Mills, Kerry Williams, Bradley Fletcher,
Rasul Douglas, who weirdly had great moments, but overall
had great moments, but didn't play the right position.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So before we get out of here, we're going to jump from NFL talk to college football talk. I don't know if you ever started a job and you're like, oh, you're the new guy, but then somebody starts a week or 2 later and you're like, cool, I don't have to be the new guy anymore. That didn't last very long. I say that to say, welcome to the Big 12, your Arizona Wildcats, along with some other schools. We were the new guys in the Big 12 for July. Let's say so. July 1st,
we were the new guys
for a month, roughly a month.
Well, you guys are the new guys now.
Yeah. Now. But now you guys are the even newer guys, and we haven't even played a game.
We're like the trainees.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, we have to train you, even though we haven't started yet. So when I first put this graphic together, it was going to say Arizona to the Big 12 ? Because we didn't know for sure. And then things really took off in the past 48 hours. There was rumors that Arizona State was trying to hold back and if you guys go, you got to pay us money for some dumb reason. And I respected the fact that you guys were willing to do what was best for you. We had a similar thing where, UCF can't go if USF doesn't because that rivalry will go away. And it's well, they blocked us from going to conferences 15 years prior. So deuces. And we went as we should have. And the Big Five Power Five is quickly turning into the Power Three. And I'm glad both of our schools are on the right side of it. How has this 48 hours been for you as a alumni and fan of Arizona?
I mean, it's been kind of crazy because the media puts out something and then someone else is putting out the opposite and they backtrack. At first they were all the schools are going to stay except Colorado, which is going to go. And Oregon's head coach for football was when has Colorado ever won anything? We're going to stay united here in the Pac-12 or Pac-11, I guess it was. And
now it's the Pac-2 as of
now it's the Pac-4.
Who's the other two?
Oregon State, Washington State, Cal, and Stanford.
That's right.
No one else. The other guys don't want them for whatever reason. They don't want them. I feel bad for Washington State and Oregon State because, they're losing their biggest rival, and the Big Ten doesn't really want them. So
I feel bad in that sense, but I don't in the sense of like you never truly brought value to your conference aside from a rivalry game that it was more about the other school. And if this is how you're realizing that your school didn't have a lot of value, it's like when your team loses a coach and you go and look at, the big names always go out, oh, Urban Meyer or somebody, yada, yada. And you look at the names that they're actually looking at, that's the harsh reality that's the value of your job right now. It's not necessarily so really these four schools that are, sitting in musical chairs without a chair, it's showing how valuable they truly are as a brand. I'm surprised Stanford and Cal didn't get, some sort of tug, and they still might. This whole thing might merge into the Mountain West and become the new Pac-12 or whatever. I don't know. But it's a real self-awareness test for some of these schools.
Well, I do feel bad for Oregon State because Oregon State was on the up.
Yeah.
Like Oregon State had been performing really well. They beat Oregon last year. So they were doing better. They were getting better. Cal is broke. Flat broke. They don't have anything.
Wild to think about. It's wild. That should be with Stanford, should be some of the most profitable universities ever.
Stanford is going to be probably going to be independent
for at least a little
while.
They've
got a lot of money, so they don't need to worry about that. I can see a Mountain West / Pac-4 fusion or a Pac-3 fusion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I was ready to just toss everything negative at ASU. The commissioner of the Pac-12 was an absolute moron. Just to put it as nicely as I possibly can, just not a smart individual. Made fun of the Big 12 for like taking a deal that the Pac-12 commissioner thought that wasn't good, so he made fun of them, and then
he got nothing close to it.
And then he got nothing close to it. You have the Pac-12 network that nobody has, that nobody watches. There wasn't a single Arizona game on ESPN last year. They had one game on CBS. The rest were on the Pac-12 network, and then 2 of the games were on Fox or some FS1, FS2 situation.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just nothing there. And if you're smart, you follow that money to a place where, or you go to a place where you can actually be seen by a national audience. Now, Arizona doesn't really excel as much at football as they excel at basketball. So now they're actually going to be in a conference where they're going to have to play Kansas and they're going to have to play Texas Tech. You know what I'm saying? So they're going to have to play TCU, these schools that do excel really well at basketball.
Yeah.
So that's going to be good for them. But I think that the toughest thing is probably going to be the travel. The travel is probably going to be the worst part because our teams, we're going to play each other for basketball, right? We might not play each other for football every year. I don't know how the Big 12
there'll be some rotation. Yeah, every
other
year, every 3 years, something. Yeah.
It's very unlikely that we're going to be in the same like division or subsection. Arizona is probably going to be in the same subsection as ASU and Utah and Colorado or something like that.
Yeah.
But the
ours will largely be UCF, Cincinnati, West Virginia, Iowa State will be definitely together because that's the most eastern version of these.
Yeah,
of the school. So that'll be. I don't know who else will be thrown in. Maybe the Texas schools or something.
Maybe the Texas schools. But I think the toughest part is going to be the fly time. I think the best part is the fact that Arizona is actually going to be taken seriously. Because you always see these conversations with people who are like, oh, well, it's the Pac-12. They're like the little league. The only thing they win at is like swimming and like fencing and archery or something like that.
Right.
So it's going to be good to actually like be in a conference where they're actually taking it seriously. Sure, Arizona's probably not going to win that much, even at the very beginning, but at least at least, we're going to get the spotlight from some of these like tier 2 like Texas players
Yeah.
who are like, I want to play in the Big 12, but I didn't make it to like a Texas
Texas
or
Tech or
Oklahoma or
yeah.
Texas Tech. I didn't make it into one of those schools, so I want to play for Arizona.
Right.
I was ready to rip ASU's head off. Their president was like, "Oh, Apple TV sounds like a great idea." I think he would have been fine with watching the Pac-12 play on people's smart refrigerators or like at the gas station. Like, I think he would have been fine with that. And then somebody just smacked him across the face and said, "Look, you need to do the right thing." And the right thing is leaving. And really what was stopping Arizona was Arizona State, because they were fine with leaving ASU behind, but the Arizona Board of Regencies was like, we want these two schools to do the same thing.
Right.
So it's kind of like, fine, I'll bring my little brother with me, one of those situations.
And there was talk of that for the UCF USF situation, but there was no board like there is in Arizona that like controlled both. It would have had to just been agreed upon. And it's like, look, Big 12 picked us, they didn't pick you, and we're not in a position to lobby for you because you've won one FBS game in the past 3 years. Like we can't say that. But I hear you too on the basketball. Like UCF will be competitive in football and baseball and softball and everything else. We've struggled in basketball anyway, and to move to the best basketball conference in the country, it's going to be rough. Like I make no bones about that. Yeah. Arizona, I could be wrong about this, but it views itself as a basketball school. I think when football does well, it's just an added bonus. It's frosting on the cake. So because of that, they view it as we're now in the best basketball conference in the country, and football's in a place that it can flourish. And you can say that about softball and everything else.
The one thing to be upset about is the fact that we never got to play in a Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
Well, we never got to play in a Rose Bowl.
The way this is going, the Pac-12 is going to dissipate. So there's a very good chance the Big Ten Rose Bowl tie might just be.
Well, at least this year, it's for the next 2 years, it's going to be a playoff game.
Okay, but so your chances are not gone completely. Might be harder to do, but there's a very good chance that when it's not a playoff game, it'll become a Big 10, Big 12 thing. But we don't know that for sure, of course. Any closing thoughts before we get out of here?
I do not. I mean, I'm excited for what the season is going to bring. I'm excited about football as it is. Hopefully that doesn't change once there's a situation where if my team doesn't do well. But I usually will watch the train wreck if it's continuing to go down the tracks. But I'm excited to see how these players do. I'm excited to see how the Eagles rebound after losing that Super Bowl.
I agree, and I'm someone that I want to see Jalen Hurts. Like I said in the first couple minutes, like I need to see 80% of what he did last year to prove it wasn't a fluke. I think that's where the goal should be. He's extremely motivated. We've all seen that picture that his phone background is him walking off the field at the Super Bowl and all that kind of corny, cheesy stuff that Jalen Hurts is into, of course. But overall, it's going to be an exciting season. We're 2 weeks from college football. We're 3 from NFL and everything. And not only is football back, but the podcast is back now. So tell a friend to tell a friend. We're back. We're going to have Nick Rice on here next week. Thank you guys for listening. It's good to be back, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.